Hello, everybody. My name is Patrick Dunn. I am the Executive Director of the New Haven Pride Center. Thank you so much for joining us as we sit down with Vladimir Rios and Lester Blum, the creators behind the incredible film that we watched earlier today at noon. Hopefully you joined us for that. We are going to be sitting down and having a brief conversation about the film, how they created it, and the artistry and thoughts behind it. We are also going to, this program, is part of the Center's World AIDS Day Observation in partnership with the New Haven Mayor's Task Force on AIDS and Guardian Health. The program started yesterday and will run through Thursday evening, where we'll conclude with the Elsie Coatfield Awards. I also want to make sure all of you consider joining us for tonight's world premiere of Night Sweats with composition by Noah Michael Smith, and original choreography by Ariane Wilkerson. That's going to be a free performance streaming live at 7:30. You can get information about that and more information about the film and everything else at newhavenpridecenter.org/World AIDS Day. So I'm going to now stop talking because nobody came here to listen to me talk, and I'm going to bring the amazing Vladimir Rios and Lester Blum to the stage. Welcome.
Thank you, Patrick.
How are you all?
We're doing great. Yeah.
Wait, is that Connecticut talk?
It is.
Well, thank you for having us on this show, and also thank you very much for doing the premiere presentation of the film. I still remember earlier today.
Well, we're honored to have been included in that premiere. So thank you for reaching out.
Yeah.
And so I want to just jump in, but before we do that, I wanted to give each of you an opportunity to tell our audience a little bit about yourselves. So who are you? What do you do? And give you that opportunity.
Oh, that's a loaded question. Totally loaded. I guess, well, okay. Who do you want to go first?
You can go first.
All right. Who am I?
So we were trying to catch up. So Lester's going to go first.
Well, I guess you could say that in many ways I'm an activist because we've put together several different programs, which I still remember is one of them, but we've done other projects together in my work as a photographer, and also I do writing. I just recently, last year, I published a children's book. This year, I just published, actually 2 months ago, a military memoir, and I'm currently working on 2 different Holocaust books. So, very busy these days. So, but the prime thing is the projects that Rios and I have worked on together, which culminated in I Still Remember the Film.
Which is a collaboration from 5 years ago. We wrote a book. Lester wrote a book, I Still Remember. So that was 5 years ago. And then we decided to bring it to life through the film. So anything else you want to say about you before?
No, unless Patrick has a question about me. I'm an open book. Hello.
Well, I'm very curious to talk to you about the Holocaust stuff, but we can't do that right now because we have other things to talk about. But I know the photography came first, and Lester, you're the photographer. So tell us a little bit about how we got from photography to film.
Well, actually, my background is actually in the fashion industry. And so from that, there's a certain aesthetic that translated from the fashion designing, merchandising, color into the use of the camera. You have to, look at layout, you have to look at color, balance, the same sort of things. It's just a different media. So the photography itself for this particular project, actually this project was we were requested to do a World's AIDS presentation for another LGBT center 5 years ago, and Rios came up with this brilliant idea of I Still Remember. So to translate that now from the photo narrative to the film, I give you Rios. It's genius.
Yeah, I'm not genius by any stretch of the imagination, but I will tell you a little bit about me, where I come from, and then how Lester and I we got together and we became this dynamic duo.
Batman and
So,
Robin.
yes.
Mm.
So I was for many years a social worker in New York City, and I served the population from the homeless, the people who got evicted from their homes, to my last job. It was working with HIV individuals that they were either having problems with alcohol or drug abuse, and they were actually homeless. So my last job, it taught me a lot about that specific population. And I always felt like I was an advocate being a social worker. And at one point, I was very disappointed because I was not able to do as much advocacy for the people being a social worker. Because you know how the politics are. If you've been in the social work field, it's very political. And you have to do the right thing, blah, blah, blah. And you have to be limited. You cannot go out of your way to help people, which is your job. But anyway, my last job, I decided to go back to school. And I said, you know what? I have to change my life and I have to do things differently because I need to put myself in a different place in life. And so I started, went back to school full time, and I left a full time job, and I started modeling. And that's how I met Lester.
Because I needed a model.
Right. So believe it or not, I was a model. I still model sometimes. But Lester and I, we became very good friends. And one of the projects that we work on is called Despair. And that photograph got Lester a big award in a big art community in New York City. So we took that as a positive thing, and we started creating projects that they were more relevant, but with a message. So we wanted to advocate for people through our photograph or through our essays and make people's voice being heard. We did before we go into I Still Remember, we did a project that it was called Invisible. We did another project is the Warrior Hall. You can look it online, all that. I'm not going to go into a specific, but that's how sort of like the birth of I Still Remember came to play because of all the other projects that we had done. And it's sort of like an advocacy in a photographic way. Yes. Yeah. So 5 years ago, we started with the projects I Still Remember because I wanted to honor those individuals that a lot of people sort of taught me that they were still alive in their hearts, in their minds, and they couldn't get the message across of like how their experience of going through the 80s and 90s through this era that it was so difficult for many of them. Like they felt like they couldn't talk to anyone about it. So we, for the last 5 years, had done the projects have been in different LGBT centers. It was even recently, 3 years ago, actually, it was in Miami. And Lester was actually interviewed on the news in Miami for World AIDS Day. So we've been very fortunate trying to share the message with others in the photographic way. And then now, 5 years later, I kind of had the urge to bring the project to life. And I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I just want to interject one thing. This particular project, I still remember when it was originally photographed. It was photographed almost in a cinematic manner.
Yes.
So it told us the story directly through the photographs. So having created it originally in a cinematic manner, it lent itself very easily for
the movie. And what is funny is that we got a lot of good responses immediately when we started to create the project. One of the things that got us a magazine coverage was when we were filming in Fire Island. This, I don't know if you can see, this cross over here is hysterical to think that someone, the day we were filming the story, that happened to be there because someone actually did a memorial for someone who passed. So it was left behind, and I was looking for a place to have a memorial. And the moment that I saw this, I'm like, oh my God, that is the coolest thing that somebody left behind, a memorial that we can use for the film, for the photo app, for the book. And someone happens to, Michael, remember Michael?
Right.
From
Magazine.
Past Magazine. He says to us, what are you guys are doing? And I said, well, we're filming something, HIV related, blah, blah. He says, I work for this magazine. It would be nice to have, an interview with you guys about this. So we were like, oh, okay. So we didn't think anything of it. And then, a month after or something like that, we were in the Post Magazine, like with the article about the project. I was very fortunate, and so is Lester, to work with so many friends that they were so supportive of the project. I mean, Alexis Flame, to mention one of them, Scott Reynolds, which is an adult entertainer, happens to be a great friend of us. They were from day one, they were so involved in the project, and so like touched by the idea that we were trying to commemorate those that passed from HIV.
And honor those that are long-term survivors.
Yes. But because also they can relate to the era, that was number one. They were at an age right now where they lived through it. They know all the people that have so many hardships, so many problems, so many, I don't know, segregation, like, people push them away, push them aside. So they really related to the story in such a way that they were so like involved. Like Scotty was like the protagonist of the story. He even cried when he was filming because the ashes actually are real ashes. Lexi can tell you about where the ashes come from, but I was crazy enough to carry the ashes of Lester will tell you that person to the beach with the wardrobe, with the makeup, with food, with drinks. And we went to Fire Island, and I said, please be careful with this box because it's a real person in here. And when he knew about it, he couldn't even hold the box to take the photograph because that was so impactful to him. So Lester can tell you a little bit about the person who we're talking about.
Well, before I go into that, I just want to mention the film itself and the book. It's a compilation of many lives. I mean, I lived through the era. And I took a lot of the experiences, a lot of the lives of people I knew, and combined them into the lives of these two individuals that are in the book. The ashes that Rios is talking about actually belonged to my best friend of the period, Lou Petronio, and he had contracted AIDS in the early part of the pandemic, and he died in '94. So it's right in the period of time that this book and the film was taking place. So the ashes, he had asked me to keep the ashes, which his family was fine with. Those are the nieces and nephews I had spoken to you about previously. And so we felt for realism, we would bring a box of ashes with us for the filming. Many aspects of both the photo narrative and the film are very realistic. I mean, we shot the street scenes, the streetwalker scene that was shot in the Meatpacking district, which was notorious in that era for streetwalkers. We shot the sex club in a real sex club. Paddles. The doctor scene that you saw in the film, that was Dr. Englard, who during that period of time, he's an immunologist, and 99% of his practice was AIDS patients. So we tried to establish a lot of reality throughout the entire process of the story, book story, and the film, so that it would give reality that people could relate. And obviously, using Scott with the ashes as an example, he playing a role related. In fact, some of the pictures that I shot, the still pictures, he's actually sitting on the beach crying.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, the film is a fictional story, of course, but it's taking a lot of real life segments to make it more believable, I would say.
Yeah, the
So,
drug segment,
yeah,
that's another one.
yeah, that was, yeah. The drug segment is funny because the drug segment, when I did the photo essay, I didn't have to do the drug scene myself, so somebody else did it. But when I did the film, I had to do the scene in Fire Island because we had like a short time to do all this filming and put it together. And I was so
Because we had to get it to you for World's AIDS Day.
and yeah, I was a little bit on the defense because I was doing in an open air in Fire Island. I was doing this scene with the syringe and people were walking by, and I was like, "It's not serious. It's not real. I'm not doing drugs." And then I saw the scene.
You should have seen the people's faces. What?
Yeah. So as I was watching the video myself, it just gave me this like thing. Like I just cannot even understand like what people feel when they doing something like that. But it was very hard for me to do that thing because I didn't really want to do it, but I know it was part of the film, so I just did it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was a very powerful moment in the film, and I mean, the film is a series of very powerful moments, to be honest. But that particular moment, I thought was very powerful, and I think the average person who's queer and LGBTQ and feels and understands the rejection that might push you to drugs, alcohol, sex, all of those things, right? I think that was a real moment. I've never personally taken any drugs, but I can see how depression and longing can push you
over the edge.
Want to feel good.
I cannot hear you.
Yeah, it makes you want to feel good.
To follow what you're saying over here.
For those who are watching, we have a slight delay between the two of us.
Yeah,
you're back now.
Yeah, I'm trying to follow. In terms of that, it's something that I want to emphasize. It's something that is really important in our gay community, and is our support towards each other. Because even when this happened in the 80s and 90s, people had each other and they became family and they supported and loved each other no matter what. And something that I feel, I'm not sure, but from my perspective, I feel that our gay community are not as supportive and as involved anymore, because we are sort of like segregating ourselves, and we have like a little cliques here and there. And we had to put that aside because, just like we were talking before about the homeless kids now, we are the one who had to look out for those younger ones, like somebody else look out for the younger generation back then. We kind of lost that. I think people are divided into the young generation and the old generation, and the old generation have forgot that we are here to educate the young generation, kind of thing. That's why we did the film also, to educate that generation, so they can learn about what HIV was and what it is now. That is still different, but it still affects people's life. But I think, we lost that kind of support and,
by learning the history, I think a younger generation has more ammunition to make wiser choices for themselves. But on to what Rios was saying about the community itself, I think in the quest to be accepted by general society, we've lost track of each other. And it's been, we're very subdivided, young, old, racially, drag versus non-drag, Butch versus Femme. You can take the divisions and just keep fragmenting and fragmenting, and that universal support. I don't know whether you noticed in the film the scene on the beach where he's reminiscing and there's all kinds of like fun things going on the beach. We purposely included a diversity of people. You had racial diversity. You also had a trans person being one of their best friends. You had age differentials, because that's what it was back then. Mm-hmm. It wasn't as fragmented. Yes, even in the 80s and 90s, there was still the fragmentation between gay men and lesbians. That exists. But the other that's now we see more existing, didn't exist then. There was more of a support within.
Yeah, I was doing when I was doing Invisible, I did an interview. Well, we did an interview with one of our friends, Timothy, Stephanie.
Yes.
And one of the part of the interview that she ended is like, we had to learn how to love each other more because the rest of the world doesn't. It is so true. I myself have like a lot of difficulties with rejection all my life, or most of my life, because being gay by my family. So the part of the religious aspect, I really wanted to involve that and to put that really out there in people's faces, because I think religion today, and even 20, 30 years ago, it should not be about hating. I think religion, it should be about loving others as opposed to push others aside. And even the last year, we have seen how much, and I'm not trying to criticize anyone who's religious, but I see how much religious entities have been so full of hate towards the gay community. And I'm thinking to myself, well, then you are not that religious if you are so hater, if you had so much hate in your heart towards someone who doesn't do anything to you. So we had to love each other. We had to come together more now more than ever, because like this person said, the rest of the world doesn't love us that much. So we had to do that for each other.
At some point, Patrick, remind me, we should talk about Invisible as a project, something maybe that the center would be interested in.
Yeah, we should definitely talk about that.
Yes. Powerful essay, yeah, photographic.
So from start to finish, how long did this project take?
Well, I will go for what I just heard. I don't know if you're still talking, but it didn't take too long because I tend to do projects very quickly, and people call me crazy because
That's why I have gray hair.
Yeah, in no time. And I have none. On, but then no more.
He's still blonde.
I am blonde. I tend to do projects really quickly because when I have an idea in my head, I have to just put it out there and get it done, because otherwise it's not going to happen. So the filming aspect of the project took about maybe a week and a half. We did a filming in Fire Island. Yeah, very quickly. We did the idea. We got the characters.
We did a storyboard.
We did a storyboard. We got everybody in place, the players and this and that, and we set the sceneries and all that and the places that we were going to film. So after we did that very quickly, we went to Fire Island. We filmed in a few days. And then part of the film, we sort of took 2-3 days after the Fire Island. So in total, it took maybe a week and a half to film everything that we wanted. And then from there...
The raw footage.
Yeah, all the raw footage. And then from there, it went to editing, which I am so thankful to Preston Lopez from the Preston Lopez Show, which I am co-host of the show. I don't know if you've ever seen it, but I co-host the show, and I give a shout out to the artists and to the people out there in our community, because it's a platform. So because of that, he volunteered to do the editing of the film. He's a colleague. Actually, we do film together, separate from the personal project, but he was so happy and so eager to do this project. He said, don't worry about it. I will do the film. I will do the editing. You don't have to even sit with me. And then he even went further and did the music for the film.
Yeah, all the music is original music.
Yes, which I was like so thankful because I almost have a heart attack not to having the music, the right music for the film. And then he says, "Oh, just leave it up to me. Don't worry about it. I just figured it out once I put the film together. Whatever comes, I would just like work with it, and I would just create it." I'm like, "Oh, okay, whatever." It's my first time doing a film, so yeah, first time.
So
Well, you couldn't tell.
Okay,
thank you.
It was the editor. Trust me, the editor.
The answer to your question is the whole process from
From beginning to it, yeah.
from conception to you getting it, 2.5 months.
Yes.
Hmm.
Yeah, which
That's still, I mean, that's still pretty quick.
That's
Yeah.
very quick. We know people that filmed last year and they still haven't finished.
and considering that we were not even here most of the time, we were traveling because we were trying to get away from the city and the riots and the COVID and all these demonstrations. So we were trying to have a moment of peacefulness outside the city. So we were like away every other week, so to speak. So in between, that's when all this happened with the film.
Great. I had a question and I lost it.
Oh, no, find it.
Well, you're single, as you know, and I'm single, as you know.
Yeah.
I gotta let you know. This is not that type of interview, I know.
No, this is not the Alexis and Tony show.
Yes.
Oh gosh, I had a really good question and I lost it because I started thinking about the process.
What that comes, I will tell you something very interesting that a lot of during the last 5 years that we've been promoting this project, a lot of people are amazed that Lester and I, we are not HIV, related. So the people are like, oh, wait a minute, so you are not HIV, but you advocating for other people who are HIV. How's that? I don't know. You want to maybe tell?
Well, no, I think the only thing that I want to add into that is the fact that it's very interesting that a lot of the organizations, the HIV/AIDS organizations, they feel that only people that have HIV or have complications from the disease can really present
an advocate, yeah,
a case such as our film or the book. That how could you possibly know anything about this? Well, you do. You lived through it. You saw the people, and I think that's again going back to that fragmentation. They've created themselves as a little group. Mm-hmm. Another little group, another splinter off of the main piece of wood. We all can contribute.
And yeah, and it's funny because Lester and I have experienced a lot of closing doors because of the fact that we are not HIV. But I'm like, okay, I'm not HIV. Yeah. I'm still advocating for the HIV community, and I have a beautiful project to present to you. But then now you are saying to me that because I'm not HIV positive, I cannot be part of your community, and I cannot advocate for the community. So I'm not saying
by the same token, 2 years ago,
others opened our doors. Yeah,
no. I was going to say there was an exhibit at Arizona State University, and they requested a couple of the individual shots from I Still Remember. They didn't question, oh, well, do you have HIV? Right. No. The non-gay community is more accepting than the gay community to the fact. So it's a very interesting phenomena that I think we're experiencing in 2020.
Yeah.
Well, and I think there's something to be said about living through the 80s and 90s as a gay man. You have a unique perspective on HIV and AIDS, regardless of people who died. Right. And people who are not here. So you can understand the loss.
Yeah. I mean, for 2 years, I took care of my friend Lou, while he was sick. He went through, all the variations, being sick, the pneumonia, he went blind for a period of time. Then he got his eyesight. I mean, you live through this, so you know it, you feel it. It becomes part of your life. whether you wanted to or not. And that was also an impact that I think I still remember had on a lot of people that are older. And we did a presentation a couple of years ago at Sage in Manhattan. And we had people that came up to us afterwards and said, it's been 40 years and I didn't want to think about any of this. But you brought it back to my mind, and you don't know how grateful I am that you made me remember. So I think it's a very important concept.
Yeah. I think for most people that I have encountered, it's so painful, the memory. But I think when you see a project like this, it's almost like it is okay to remember. It is okay to remember and honor that one that you love so much. It's not here today, but it's still here with you. So it's okay, and it's okay. And I think because of that it's okay, people are more embracing now the project, because it's like, oh my God, you made me remember that person. You made me like honor that person. It was in the back of my head because I didn't want to think about it. Back then, you don't talk about that. And even today, we find a lot of people difficulties with communicating that someone died from HIV, like in the 80s and 90s, like because it's taboo. It was something that it was taboo.
It's almost the same concept like in the 60s and 70s. You never used the word cancer. Oh, she has the C. It's almost the same type of thing. If you say the word, that means you're going to get it. And so that became in the 80s and early 90s the concept for AIDS.
Right.
We don't talk about it. We don't say what it is.
So that I remembered what I was going to ask.
Yeah.
The poem at the beginning I thought was incredible. Who came up with that, and like what is the story of the poem? Because that was awesome.
Well,
he did done.
I am not that creative, trust me. I have a lot of friends that they are really super creative, and Alberto Benitez was one of them. He's a friend of mine. I know him for several years, and he always had this passion for poetry. So I said, I'm creating this project, and it would be nice to have like a something to commemorate and to remember, but in a beautifully put. I said, I cannot do that because I'm not a poet. So what about, if you create something for this project? So he said, well, let me think about it. I'm not sure.
Yeah, we told him basically
what it was.
Outline of the photo narrative. Yeah. We didn't even let him read the story.
Right.
Just here's the basic concept of what it is. Go with it.
Yeah.
And he came up with it.
And then he created this beautiful message for in remembrance. Yes. Well, we have a poster, but yeah. But so he was very talented, and he was very gracious and very happy to be part of the project, and that was his contribution.
And so we're in the last few minutes.
Okay.
I think with art, the audience takes a lot and they assume a lot and assign their own story to understand. But as the creators, what is the underlying message that you want to tell with this film?
Well, you can go first, because you can relate to the film for the first era or the 80s and 90s.
The underlying message that we want to tell is remembrance. Remember the people. They're in your hearts, they're in your minds, they'll always be alive. Remember them, and be supportive of those that are still suffering from the disease. And it's also to raise the ultimate, in my opinion, is to raise awareness on the general population, because while over the last 40 years we've won a lot of battles, the war against AIDS has not been won. And there's still a lot of work to do on both private and public governmental formats in order to win that war.
Yeah, so in my case, I go with Lester. I think first it was to remember, and to me, I will go back to saying it is okay to be sad. It is okay to miss that person. It's the person should be in your memories, in your heart. Keep it alive. It is okay. And the other part, it was like the most important aspect that we used this film and the project in general for, it was to educate other people. I think there is no reason for the HIV population to continue to increase when there's so much information out there, where there's so much like preventative, medicines and things. And, it's all about educating our generation so they don't go through what the other generation went through the 80s and 90s. There's no reason for it. So I think for the people today, the better educated that we are is the better for the next generation. And you have to pass that history. It's a part of our history that we should not forget where we came from and where we are today. But I think one needs to learn, in order to move forward, as opposed to moving forward without learning from the past.
We don't want to lose another generation of wonderful, talented people, because an entire generation was decimated, not only in America, but throughout the world.
I want to add something. Doing this project, one thing that always comes to mind is how people always remember people from the past with love. It's like, oh my God, I used to love his smile. I used to love his cooking. Or I used to love this and that. And there's never a bad sentence that says, well, he was a hateful person. No, it's always like, I remember this. It made me so happy when, he used to dress up. He used to be flamboyant. He used to be happy and fun. So all these things to me, it makes worth for me to do the film with Lester, because I can capture and bring that little memory that it was in the back of the head of someone and bring some happy thoughts. And this is all about happy thoughts. I know it's a sad day and because the person is not here, but as long as you keep the happy thoughts with you, that person is still alive.
Well, and what a way to finish. I don't think there's anything else to say after that. Thank you, both of you, for being a part of World AIDS Day and our World AIDS Day Observation Week. And thank you for sharing this piece with us. It's very, very powerful. And there's a lot of heart in it.
Well, thank you so much for having us.
Well, I'm gonna close this out. So thank you everybody for joining us again. Please consider joining us tonight for our world premiere of Night Sweats, which will begin at 7:30, streamed on all of the Center's social media platforms.
Thanks again to the Center, Patrick, and to all the viewers that have been watching.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
I think this was